Hi guys, so I'm going to be knitting a cardigan, and I've selected the Lillian cardigan for this project. I'm going to be breaking down the steps as I start this project and kind of do little segments along the way so that you can follow along or kind of get an idea of specific sections of how to put a cardigan together. So the first thing you need to start with is your yarn, right? So for this project I've selected this really nice Madeline Tosh hand-dyed 100% merino wool yarn. It's a DK weight, which is actually a skinnier weight than the pattern calls for, but I think it'll work. I'm going to test my gauge and make sure that it matches the pattern, and we'll go over that in another segment. But what I wanted to show you today is how I start out by winding the yarn. Most hand-dyed yarn comes in hanks, which is this kind of twisted yarn, and you can't knit with it directly in this setup. You have to wind it into a ball so that you have a workable yarn to knit with. So that's kind of the first step for beginning any project and beginning your cardigan. So let's go ahead and show you how I do that. So the first thing you want to do is take off the label and untwist your hank. So these labels are super helpful. Don't throw them away. They have information about your yarn, and if you hold on to them through your project, it'll help you keep track of how many balls of yarn you've used. So keep them in a little baggie or something with your project. The first thing you want to do is kind of untwist the hank, right? So you just kind of undo it, and you'll see that it comes in a nice beautiful circle here, and it has these little ties that are kind of holding it together, and usually one of the ties will have a bunch of knots in it, and that's where the yarn actually starts. So quick note, you could get a ball winder to do the manual task of winding the yarn for you. They're not terribly expensive. Personally, I like to do it by hand because the yarn is nice, right? You're enjoying the process. You're getting to know the yarn that you're going to be working with. If you do it by hand, you can take your time, you can see the colors, you can kind of anticipate where your project is headed as far as different variations in your yarn. And I just like the tactile aspect of doing it by hand. So I don't use a ball winder, but you certainly can. So I'm going to start by unsnipping these little ties that are holding the yarn together. You just want to take your time, keep the yarn in a circle the way that it came as best you can, but just snipping these little ties. And I like to cut them right up next to the knot so that I can save them. And I know they're super tiny, but maybe that could be used for some scrap yarn or another project. If you have lots of little pieces put together, it might be kind of fun. Alright, some of these skinnier ones I usually don't save because I don't know what I would use with something that skinny. So just making your way through the circle. Alright, so I've found a spot here which I believe is going to be the start of the actual yarn. It has 4 strands tied actually into this knot. So that is where I believe the yarn is going to start. Just finishing up these little ties here. Okay, and then cutting this one carefully near the beginning of the knot. And as you undo that, you can kind of see that you're going to have a start and an end of this huge circle of yarn. So, the way I like to begin is to drape this over my knees. Now you could use the back of a chair or anything really that will keep the yarn circle kind of intact. Starting with one of the loose ends, just get yourself a nice piece to work with. So there's two ways you can wind a ball of yarn. You can wind it so that it pulls from the outside or so that it pulls from the inside. I like to wind them so they pull from the outside. I find it doesn't tangle the yarn, and it's pretty easy to pull the yarn into your knitting as you use it. Sometimes if you wind it so that it pulls from the inside, it can be really tight and it can be difficult to pull the yarn. So I wind it so that it pulls from the outside. To get started, you just want to find the loose end of your yarn, and you're going to bring 3 fingers together, bring the yarn tail on the inside of your hand, and then just gently start to wind the yarn around your 3 fingers several times. Once you have about, I don't know, a centimeter or so of yarn, go ahead and take it off the fingers, and then you just start to wrap the yarn over itself. So I do a nice few wraps, and not too tight, right? Just a nice few wraps. I usually do 3 to 5 wraps, and then I turn the yarn about 1/3 of the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so as you start to use up your yarn, you'll need to get more from the circle that your knees are holding in place. And then you just continue, and it's really as easy as that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a little bit of a turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep turning the yarn every 3 to 5 wraps so that you get an even ball when you're finished. Go slowly, make sure that you don't lose the integrity of your original yarn circle, otherwise it will be aggravating to unravel. So take your time and enjoy. It's a really nice way to get to know your yarn, get to see the colors that you're going to be working with. And you know, it doesn't have to be completely perfect. You're basically just getting the yarn into a usable state, so can't really mess it up too much. So I'm going to be busy doing this for a little while. So that's really all there is to it. I'm gonna finish up this little bit here, and then I'll be ready to use my 2 yarn balls when I begin my cardigan. So please check out the next video in this segment. We're going to be working on putting together a gauge swatch, which will help us ensure that we have the right needle and our project ends up in the size that we intended to be. All right, thank you so much.